And we begin this Sunday morning with breaking news on President Biden's handling of the United States' most sensitive information. We now have new information on the bulk of documents that Joe Biden donated to his alma mater, the University of Delaware. According to lawyers representing the parties who are trying to get to these documents, there are 1,850 boxes and 415 gigabytes of electronic records consisting of the so-called Biden records. The documents are said to fill up 2 tractor-trailer trucks. What we do not know is who sent the money to the university to archive and maintain these records, as the university will not release the accompanying so-called gift agreement. Meanwhile, this upcoming Tuesday, the General Counsel for the National Archives and Records Administration will sit for an on-the-record interview with the House Oversight Committee over classified documents found at multiple unsecured locations, including Biden's Delaware home and his office at the Penn Biden Center. This comes as, according to Senator Ron Johnson, an email from Hunter Biden in 2014 about Ukraine to one of his business partners looked suspiciously like it was taken directly from classified information that the State Department gives members of the Senate when they travel overseas. This email from Hunter Biden to Devin Archer. Joining me right now to discuss all of this is Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. He's a member of both the Judiciary and Foreign Relations Committees and is calling for a hearing on all of this. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Good to be with you.
Well, first, let's talk about this email from Hunter Biden to Devin Archer. It's quite specific, and we don't know where Hunter Biden got this information. But as you know, your colleague Ron Johnson is raising his hand about it. The email reads, some sort of decentralization will likely occur in the East. If it doesn't, the Russians will continue to escalate their destabilization campaign, which could lead to a full-scale takeover of the eastern region, most critically Donetsk. The strategic value is to create a land bridge for Russia to Crimea. Your thoughts on this email and your calls to get a hearing on what specifically is in these documents that have been identified at unsecured locations?
Well, the one thing we know for sure is Hunter Biden didn't write that. Hunter Biden is not an expert on Ukraine. He's not an expert on Eastern Europe. He's not an expert on Russia. But that email did help get him on the board of Burisma. It did help get him paid $83,000 a month because it showed a level of expertise, not coming from him, but he was getting it from somewhere. That's clearly from some sort of briefing. We don't know whether it was a classified briefing or not, but that is the sort of analysis that is often within a classified briefing. And this email is unusual in the Hunter Biden emails. There's a level of scholarship and erudition that if it magically appeared, somehow it doesn't appear in the other emails he's sending. The obvious question is, what was he cutting and pasting from? What was his source? And it raises the natural inference that Hunter Biden had direct access to these classified documents. We do know that Joe Biden, it seems everywhere they search for classified documents for Joe Biden, they find it, whether it is Wilmington home, his Rehoboth Beach home, whether in his garage next to his Corvette, whether in the room next to his garage next to his Corvette, whether in the Penn Biden Center. It seems he leaves classified documents wherever he goes. And we also know that Hunter Biden at times declared his residence to be those very same places. And so I believe the natural next step that is necessary is for the FBI to examine the 1,850 plus boxes of documents from Joe Biden's Senate tenure that's at the University of Delaware. And I also believe it is critical for the FBI to search Hunter Biden's home and office residences to make sure there are no classified documents there. Given all the evidence that's piling up, we need to ascertain who's had access to what and when.
Senator, it's very concerning that we have no idea what these documents are. So I want you to talk to us about what these documents could be. You and your colleagues have been asking to get access to these documents. Certainly, every member of the Senate Intelligence Committee wants to see these documents. They say enough is enough, but the DNI said no. She just basically said no. And what we have here is a letter to Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, from the lawyers investigating this. And they are telling us that there's 1,850 boxes of the documents, enough to fill a tractor trailer, and the 415 gigabytes of electronic records. But the University of Delaware will not release who paid, who funded the archival and the maintenance of these documents. Was it Communist China?
Well, that's certainly a reasonable inference. It seems Joe Biden, certainly when Joe Biden went to Penn, Communist China paid millions of dollars to fund what he was doing. Communist China, we also know, paid Hunter Biden and the Biden family millions of dollars. And so there's a long history of Communist China writing checks. The fact that University of Delaware is trying to keep these documents secret, in fact, it said it's not going to release any of them until 2 years after Biden leaves public office, I think that's unacceptable. And let me say, the content of these documents, last week, the administration briefed the Intelligence Committee. And I got to tell you, the members of the Intelligence Committee that I spoke to were really frustrated. Both Republicans and Democrats were ticked off because essentially the administration said, go jump in a lake. We're not going to tell you anything. And that is thoroughly unacceptable. Look, there's a range of classified documents. I've read a lot of classified documents. Some are just general geopolitical observations. The consequences of that are not terribly significant. But there are other classified documents that involve sources and methods that implicate how we gather secret information. And some of the most delicate are those that can endanger the lives of covert operatives. We don't know if any of these documents fall into that category. There's an entirely different level that we need to know, which is whether any of these classified documents that Joe Biden had illegally in multiple locations involve his own family's business activities and potential corruption, whether they involve Burisma in Ukraine, whether they involve Communist China and the entities that were paying the Biden family millions of dollars. If he, in fact, had classified documents that implicate his own financial well-being, that raises the potential of very serious criminal liability. It's an issue I've talked about at great length on the podcast I do every week, yep. Verdict, analyzing the legal exposure that Joe Biden and the Biden White House faces.
Senator, you've been in the SCIF plenty of times. How do you get documents out of the SCIF? I mean, look, you have to sign in and you have to sign out. And when you sign out, you're making a commitment. I am not holding anything that I just looked at, aren't you?
You are. The fact that he had documents from his Senate tenure, I have to admit, is baffling. I've been in the Senate 10 years. I can state to a metaphysical certainty there are no classified documents at my home. How do I know that? Because I've read classified documents in only one place. It is in the SCIF, which is a secure location in the basement of the Capitol. You go down and down and down the stairs. The reporters follow you as you're going, and they stop at the door. They're not allowed to go any further in. You go through a whole series of doors. It's almost like the opening of Get Smart, walking through a whole series of doors. And then you go, there's a police officer, and you check in any electronics you have. You give them your cell phone, you give them your AirPods, you give them your Fitbit. You have no electronics at all. You go through a giant secure door, a second secure door, and you sign out any documents you're going to read. And you read them in that locked room. Right. And then you give them back the documents and you sign them back in, which means if you have them, I don't know how you get them short of, you remember when Bill Clinton was president, his national security advisor, Sandy Berger, who literally took classified documents from a SCIF, stuffed them down his underwear because he wanted to smuggle them out, and he wasn't very good at it. He got caught. I don't know if Joe Biden did that, but I have no idea how he got classified documents out of that SCIF. I don't know any other senator who's ever done that.
Well, wow. This leads me to another topic I want to get your take on, and that is term limits, because this is the issue when people go into Congress and are there for 30, 40, 50 years. You begin to think it's about you, and you have this unlimited power. You tweeted this week that you'd like to see a vote on term limits. I think our viewers would like that as well.
Look, absolutely. You want to talk about an issue that has widespread and bipartisan agreement. Term limits, a supermajority of Americans, more than 70% of Americans support term limits. More than 70% of Republicans, more than two-thirds of Democrats, more than two-thirds of independents. It's a massive support. There's one group that doesn't support term limits, and that is career politicians in Washington. All of the Democrats in the Senate oppose term limits, and all of the Republicans who've been there a gazillion years oppose term limits. I've introduced a constitutional amendment that would limit every senator to 2 terms, would limit every House member to 3 terms. I believe we ought to take it up and vote on it, because if we got career politicians out of Washington in both parties there would be a lot less of the corruption of the swamp that is endemic and that sadly implicates both Democrats and Republicans.
Well, will Chuck Schumer bring it to the floor?
Sadly, I don't think he will. I will keep fighting. I hope the House brings it up for a vote. We're much more likely to get a vote in the House under Kevin McCarthy. But Schumer doesn't want to vote on this because Schumer wants to stay there 1,000 years. And I think some of our Democratic colleagues have been there 1,000 years.
Yeah. Senator, thank you, and thank you for pushing so that our military gets what they are due after getting fired, and now you push to get that vaccine mandate eliminated in the military.
Yes.
We will talk soon. Thank you, sir. Senator Ted Cruz this morning in Texas.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.